it's Hannah, the Artisan Duck, and I have another polymer clay tutorial today. I made this cute little brooch using Fimo faceted stones that I'd made. So I thought I'd show you how to make the faceted stones and then how to make the actual brooch. And what's fun about these stones, if you can see, is they sort of look like imitation gemstones because I've mixed translucent clay with alcohol inks to give you like this irregular colour swirl to it. So let's get started. Right, as you can see, I've already got a little bit of clay mixed up, and that's from when I made the previous brooch, and I don't want that clay to go to waste. So I'll just quickly run through for the purple colour how I did it. So you start off with some translucent clay, and this is translucent Fimo, and I want it really soft because I'm going to squeeze this into a mould to make the faceted stone. So you need it quite soft. This pink one I've already done, and it's kind of like a thick chewing gum kind of feel to it. So in order to get it like that, you need to sort of condition it well, get it nice and soft and pliable and all that. But then I also used some liquid Fimo, and I have this sitting around, and I use it for like gluing bits of clay together. And if you've got a hard bit of clay and then you've got a raw bit of clay, you can glue them together by using this. But to get this super soft, I'm just going to mix in a little bit of translucent clay, and I'll do a little bit at a time just so I can gauge how soft it's getting. It can be a little mucky on your fingers, so if that worries you, maybe this is not the project for you. But just have a tissue on standby to clean it off your hands if you need to. Just work it in to the clay, and you'll notice that it gets soft, a lot softer. Fimo can be a firmer clay, I've noticed, to Sculpey. I've got a little bit of Sculpey that I use, and that is a softer clay, but I like the white translucent clay because I just think you get a better result. And the Sculpey translucent clay has a creamy finish to it, so that's getting much softer, and you just keep adding more liquid clay in little intervals just to get the texture you want. And a little bit does go a long way, so I am very, very cautious with how much I mix in at a go. So keep mixing. It's starting to feel much, much softer. Right, there we go. Now to get the colour, I'm going to use alcohol inks, and I'm using these Pinata inks. So for the purple, it's Passion Purple, and for the pink, it's this Senorita Magenta. And I'll just show you. This is the pink, and it's quite pale, and yet when you pop it in the oven, the colour really comes out. So you just be careful how much you mix in. So it may look super pale, but you know it's going to get darker. And this is the purple. It looks almost like swirly blue here, and yet once you pop it in the oven, it really goes a much darker purple. So in order to do that, I'm going to just take my lid off. Oops, it's stuck. And I'm going to really quite careful how much I add. That's even probably too much, we'll see. I'm going to give it a second or two to dry before I mix it in, otherwise I'll end up with ink all over my fingers. So just bear with me while this dries. I'll be back in a minute. Right, there we go, it's dry, so I'm just going to start mixing, and I always fold inwards, I think, just in case it's still wet. Most of it will end up in the clay. However it works for you, and I'm just going to keep on squishing it, and I don't want to mix it in fully. I kind of want to leave a marbly swirled finish, if you can see that, and that's what will give you this irregularity in your finished stones. And obviously if you don't think you've got enough ink, you can add more, less, however you want, but I say the results can be somewhat unpredictable, so you just have to go with it and see what you end up with. Right. I may add just the tiniest bit more, like a pinprick amount if I can. Still too much. I'll just go back and I'll dab it off with a tissue, get rid of some of it. I really don't want too much more. So, because I got rid of the excess, I'm just going to fold it straight in like this. There we go. Can you see the swirly pattern there, which I really like? So I'm going to avoid over mixing this because I want to keep some of that irregularity. Now, for the faceted bit, I've got this super cheap mould that I bought absolutely ages ago to use with resin. But in all honesty, I don't do much resin work, so I thought I would try and use this for clay. I wouldn't bake this in the oven. I'm just not sure it'd withstand it. It's not the most expensive of moulds. Yeah, it's relatively inexpensive, but if you can find a mould like this on Amazon, which is where I've got mine, I will link to it. I've bought mine in the UK, so I will put some links down below, and there's some links in my blog post that I'll link to. But yeah, so put that down, and we're going to use, and if you can see it, there's a little oval faceted one here. So I'm going to use some scrap clay just for a second because this has been sat on my desk. I'm just going to push it in and make sure that there's no fluff in there. I have a black cat and his fur gets everywhere, so I'm going to position it because I want some of this swirliness as well. I'm going to sort of get it to roughly the right size, and I'm going to push the clay into the mould straight down, hoping you can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to push it. And obviously this is too much clay for this mould at the minute. Really push it in. And then I'm going to take my bendy blade, and once you've got the hang of this, you can make these faceted stones quite quickly. I'm just going to go across and cut really carefully. And there's my faceted stone. Got some in there that I don't need. Can you see that? If you need to top it up, I've got a bit of a dip in mine, I think, so I might just go and top it up with a little bit more clay. In fact, I'll have this bit that I've just taken out. You just need to get this back quite flat, because this is what you're going to put against the other clay on the flower shape. Like that. And then you're going to bend your mould back, take your stone and pop it out, and there you go. There's your little clay stone. If there's any rough edges like that, you can just go and smooth them down. There you go, there's your first little faceted stone. Pop that to one side, and then we can go back in, where is it, and make another one. So for this one I might just take some of the clay off. There's the cat fur, and we're going to push it into the mould. Obviously with the moulds you don't have to worry about damaging them. You could damage them if you cut them wrong, but if you use your your curved blade and keep it flat against the mould, you should be okay. And then just push it back in, make sure it's flat, and pop it out. There you go. And for the pink one, it's the same thing, only you take your pink clay, and I'm just going to get that into a point, and I'm going to use this circular one, which is just here. Push that in, it. And I always go back and just repress, because where you drag the blade it starts to pull it away from the mould a little bit. So I'll just go back, make sure it's all pristine, as pristine as I can anyway. So the mould is not the best, but it's good for this technique. I never used it with resin, never bothered. And there's your faceted centre, which will be this one here. There you go. So I'm going to go off, I'm going to make the rest of my little petal shapes, and then I shall come back and show you how to do the rest of the brooch. Right, so I've got my 6 petals and my flower centre, and I've taken some of this quite bright purple. It doesn't look so purple on this screen, but it is quite a bright purple, and some navy blue Fimo, and I've mixed them together to give a slightly darker purple. And I've done that by taking, I just used a cutter shape like that, and I softened the clay, put them through my clay machine on about a number 1 each, and then I cut 3 circles of the purple and 1 circle of the blue. So I've mixed it with a ratio of 3 to 1. So if you mix it that way, if you then need to come back and mix more, you can get exactly the same colour that you had previously. So I've done all that, and I've rolled this out on a number 3. So it's not too thin, but it's also thick enough to hold my flower base nice and sturdy. Right, so the first thing to do is just, I'll show you this one. You're just going to put your centre on it right in the middle, and then position your petals around the edge. So there's one. I'm trying not to handle them too much because I'm always worried they'll distort, and then I'm going to just gently put my petals up against the centre. I'm also trying not to push them down too firmly, because I might need to go back and just alter the positioning ever so slightly. There we go. I'm going to position that one a bit more upright, just because it looks slightly wonky. And it's very hard, it's never going to be perfect, and I could sit and play all day with it. But once you're happy, just, obviously you don't want to press it because you'll lose all your faceted work, but just gently make sure it's all stuck down. Right, the next thing I've got is this flower cutter, and this is, I believe, 3 centimeters wide, so across the petals, and I'm going to use this and line it up around this flower so it's roughly even, and then cut it out so you can eat. I've got 6 petals here and 6 petals here. Alright, so when you're convinced you got it roughly right, just press it down and then take off the excess, lift it up, and there's your flower shape. So I'm just going to use my blade to loosen it, and you can see it's not perfectly central. The other one wasn't as well, but once we've finished it off you won't notice. I'm going to get rid of the excess bits around the edges, and then we can move on. Right, I've got more of this sort of purple and blue mix, and I'm going to put it through my extruder with this disc here, which I think comes as standard if you've got a makings extruder. So bear with me, I shall do that because nobody wants to watch me twist clay through that. Back in a second. There we go, I've got my long worms of clay. So I'm just going to get one of them, put the rest to one side. So we're just going to take one snake of clay, and I want to make sure that there's a really straight edge on that. So I just use my craft knife to cut it off. And I'm going to take this and pop it around the flower shape. So I'm trying to do this so you can see. I'll pop it there for a minute, I'll pick it up afterwards. We're just going to pop this around the flower shape. I really hope you can see what I'm doing. If that's too close, I apologise. I'll probably zoom out again in a minute, but I'm just going to pop it like that, and then you need to get it around and in. So I found you could just bend the clay. It's clear, but so I just bend it like that, and then sort of pushed it in, manhandled it into the clay. You could also use, I do have one somewhere, this ball-ended tool, and you could use that to help sort of really get the clay into that shape. There you go, that looks a bit better. And then just keep taking this clay and wrapping it round until you've done all the way around. Right, there we go. So I've done it all the way around, and I'm just now going to take my craft knife, and where the two pieces meet, carefully cut that, and not our little faceted stone. Take that off to one side. And then I'm going to just gently push those two pieces together to create as nice a join as I can. But we're also going to come in and texture this so you won't notice it. So I've got just a little medium-sized ball tool. I don't know if you've noticed, this one had lots of little texture around it, and then I do that sometimes just to hide any imperfections, like where the join of the clay is, that kind of thing. So it's really simple. You just take your ball tool and just gradually work your way around your flower shape. So I'm going to go off and do that, and then I shall come back. There we go, that's all been textured. So now we're going to take another snake of clay, and this one we're going to wrap around again, and we're going to sort of build up the side. You can see there, just neaten it all off. So this is the inside bit, and then we've got another row of clay around the outside. So just take the tip and roll it like that, and you just want to get a thinner point, and this is going to go around the bottom of the clay. So if you think about, you're going to make two levels of this snake. This is going to go on the bottom level. If you can see it, there you go. This is going to go on the bottom one, so right near your work surface. There we go. And then again, you're going to just wrap it round. It's not going to be easy to show, but all I did was wrap it round and make sure you're not too tight with this, so you can just push it. Use that ball tool again to push that clay into those petals like that. And then you can just go around and just keep doing that all the way around. And I shall be back once I've done that and show you what I do for the second level. Right, can you see? I'm at the point, so this is where we started from, and I've come round. So I'm just going to take the clay and carry on wrapping it round, but it's going to go on top so it forms a second layer. Can you see? I don't know if you can see it. So it's just going to sit on top. And it focuses like that, and you're going to get that two layers of clay. So I shall carry on. It'll probably become clear when it's finished. Right, I've gone round, and I'm just now need to finish off. This is where we started, so this is where the second layer began. So I'm just going to carefully cut off a little bit of clay like that, and then I'm going to roll it. Maybe I'm just take some of that off for a second. Just roll it to get a finer point, and then we can go back and just pop this all back on. Like that, and then just blend in that final little point there. And there is our little wrapped flower shape, and it's really surprising how quickly it comes together and actually starts to look quite a solid piece from these tiny little faceted stones that we started from. So I'm going to take my little ball tool again, and exactly the same way, just start adding dots all the way around the edge like this, and it helps to push the layers of clay together, makes them stick together, all that kind of thing. So it's quite a nice little step, and it has lots of different uses. So I shall be back in a second once I have finished. Right, once you have done all that, use your blade to pull it off your tile and then turn it upside down. And you can just see where there's some little gaps there, and I'm just going to use the side piece there just to gently push those in, and I'm going to go around and do all of them. Just don't put any pressure on these stones. All the pressure comes from these side pieces here. And then you can turn it over and just check the shape, so you can just squeeze the petals back into shape if you want to. And then other than that, this just needs to go in the oven. So once I've done all that, I'll be back, but there's not much more to do now other than to show you how I add the brooch back and what the stones look like once they've been hardened. Okay, so I shall see you soon. Right, this has now been in the oven, so it's all ready to move on to the next stage, which is to add the brooch back. So to do that, we're going to use the same purple and blue mix that we had before. And I've rolled this out onto a number 4, so it's reasonably thin, and I've got my brooch back here as well. Right, so all I do is I use a cutter, and a rectangle cutter, and just cut my shape out like that. And then we don't need it quite as long, so I sort of take my cutter, see how long that's going to be, and then use my cutter just to cut the end off. And the reason I use the shape cutter again is because it's slightly rounded at the corners. So by using the same shape cutter to do it again like that, you get the corners rounded off too. So now we've got our little piece. So I'll just slide that up. And you can see there's a few little rough edges that you can just take off and neaten up. Pop that there. And then I've got some of my liquid Fimo again. So I'm just going to rub some of this onto the back. So you don't need a lot, but this is going to be our glue between the baked clay and the raw clay. So I'm just going to use my finger and rub that around. You can see it like leaves a bit of a sticky mess, but that's fine. Just wipe the excess off my finger, and I'm going to take my brooch back and position it roughly where I want it to be. So that looks good to me. Trying to visualize how it's going to look when it's hanging from the front. I think that looks good. And then you take your clay rectangle and just pop it over. So there's two things here to make sure it doesn't stick out at the front. You don't want to see this piece at the front, and also there's like a little metal bit here on this clasp. You want to make sure that when it closes, it's not going to be hitting this rectangular piece, because that will prevent it from closing. So that looks good to me. I'm just going to firmly press it down. I really want this to be stuck around like so. And now it's just going to go back into the oven for sort of half an hour or so. That's what I tend to do it for, until that's all sorted, and then I shall come back and show you when I've varnished it and it's all ready. Alright, see you soon. There we go, there's the finished brooch. It's all been varnished and whatnot, and there's the original one. So you can see the stones, sort of the faceted stones, vary slightly depending on how much alcohol ink I put in and how much I mixed it. I clearly added a little bit more and mixed them a little bit more thoroughly for this one. But yeah, there's our brooch with handmade faceted stones. It's a pretty cool technique, which I think I will be using again for other things. Alright, until next time, see ya, bye!